right, guys. Hi there to nobody because nobody's looking at me yet. I just want to do a little restream about Balaji and his, he's got this recent post. Let me go over this post. And let's look at this post. Yeah, I think it's worthwhile talking about this post. Let's go over this post. Okay. So Balaji's got this post, and I want to spend a little bit of time. Maybe if Tom Young jumps in, he can also debate this. But he starts out by saying there's no reindustrialization without de-dollarization, right? So if the dollar goes down, if we force the dollar down, then we have what he calls imperial collapse, right? On the other hand, if we deindustrialize, if we let China build everything, and if we go to just watching Netflix, then we also have imperial collapse, right? So, he goes on about this, and he actually makes some really good points. As always, he makes really good points, but I think it's worth. So, Safe Dean comes in and says, well, most Americans don't benefit from this empire. We don't need bases overseas. We don't need for Americans to have this imperial American. So a collapse of it would be good for most Americans. And then Balaji comes back and says, well, no, because we have these blue states and the red states, and they don't get along. They don't marry each other. The blue states are burning Teslas. The red states are making Teslas. So we have the whole social fabric that's just kind of falling apart. There's sort of discussions about that. And then he goes to this chart here, which says, look, we have a fundamental trend here that America was making, close to 50% of everything in the G7 back in 1990. Now we're making about 30%, so we've lost about 15% of market share versus the BRICS. Of course, they've just gained that. And so there's a steady increase from China mainly and India, and steady decrease from the US and Europe, right? And so, we're supposed to say, okay, what's happening here, blah, blah, blah. And, he's got chart after chart sort of showing that we're in trouble, right? And there's talk about AI. I want to get to the AI stuff. The AI. But basically what he sort of says on AI is, this is interesting. We're basically sort of saying the dollar printing is going to end, and everybody's going to either get a productive job or starve. So we've got this imminent collapse of the money printer, and this is just going to cause this incredible tear in the social fabric of the U.S., which is interesting, and I don't disagree with them. And then we talk about, okay, AGI, fusion power, robotics manufacturing. And, Balaji is very dismissive of that, right? So this is one thing where he says, in theory, yes, you could have really smart robots and fusion and everything else. But, we haven't seen it yet, basically. And so we have 2.5 years of AI experience. It's I think he calls it a panacea, not a, doesn't save everything. But anyway, so that's sort of, I'm going to go back to just this. So that's sort of the Balaji view of the world here, right? So the Balaji view of the world is that we've been printing money like crazy to save off the inevitable, and we're at the very end of our printing. We don't have much printing left, And, he said this 2 years ago in May. I had to go check the date, but it was May of 2023, 20, yeah, 2023. And, this was right kind of at the time when Silicon Valley Bank was going bust. And, he said Bitcoin was going to go to 1 million within 90 days. He sort of said we're going to go the suddenly, gradually, and then suddenly. So he said, basically, Bitcoin is going to 1 million within 90 days. Of course, it didn't, and he had a bet, and he lost his bet for $1 million. So his track record on these kind of crazy predictions isn't very good. I would say. He's incredibly smart, but his track record's not great on these things. And to be honest, nobody's really is. So, there's a lot of super, super smart people, including a lot of people on my spaces and my feed and everything. We're super smart, but it's really hard to say how all these pieces will fit together and what kind of future these things are going to be. But will it be what Balaji's saying, or sort of Chinese factories just taking over the world? Well, perhaps not. And I would say the perhaps not part of this is, I would say, there's a couple reasons why I say not. First of it is Tesla is a very good example of, it's the example of what you can build in America, right? So Tesla, their plants are in America, their parts are made in America. It's an American company. Yeah, sure, they have a plant in China, but this company has proved that a single company can change an entire industry, and you can do it all in America, right? So I think anybody who says you can't do it in America, that we're too far behind, etc., just look at Tesla, because Tesla proves that you can do it in America. So hey, Tree City. So I definitely think we can do stuff in America. And, if you can do it in cars, you can do it in everything. We can do it in tractors. We can do it in all kinds of things. So it's not too late. You don't have to declare, wave the white flag and say we surrender to China. That's not. I just don't understand that. To me, it's like the second thing I would point out to that is that and this is sort of Rob Clausen's argument, all the top companies in the world, all of them are American. So if you go down the list of the top 30 companies, and all of them are American, and by the way, all of them are created in that, not all of them, but most of them were created in that same 20-year period where America was going, quote unquote, down relative to China. So whether you're looking at NVIDIA, whether you're looking at Facebook, Amazon, Apple, all of the Mag 7, basically, except Microsoft, which is older, but most of these things are new companies. And America is really good at building new companies and incubating new companies and creating incredible value. And I furthermore think that this is going to be the determinant of success going forward. It's not going to be cheap labor force. Cheap labor force, hey, from Honduras, hi, Pablo. I don't think cheap labor force is going to be the big determinant going forward. Why? Because we are moving to a robot labor force, okay? That's just the fact of the matter. Now, if you're a coder, I got good news and bad news for you. The good news is AI is going to make you so much more productive, right? And if you're not already embracing it, I think you should absolutely embrace it. The bad news is we don't need as many coders per se as we used to. The way you code has fundamentally changed. Now, I'm a coder, okay? I used to be a hardcore coder, and I've coded coded in assembly language. I've coded in C. I've coded in C++. Coded in Pascal. I've coded. I've taken courses in COBOL and Lisp, in all these different languages, right? And I'm an old coder. I'm way past my coding prime. But if I look at now how you can code, okay, and I've been doing some recently, it's a completely different type of programming. It's what they call vibe programming. So basically, you're sitting there and you're talking to the AI, and you're saying, okay, I want you to build this. Okay, so I see you're doing that over here. No. I would like you to deploy this in this format here. Okay, great. Now, restart that server. Okay, good. Perfect. Okay. So this is how you're coding. You're basically instructing the AI to do the coding. You're course correcting the AI as the AI is coding. And then once you've sort of developed stuff, you have another AI potentially that is kind of putting the pieces together and refining the stuff. So AI is the new workforce. AI is doing the thinking. And, for Balaji to sit there and sort of be dismissive of, 2.5 years of AI. Well, we got 2.5 years of AI. We've got amazing stuff that's happening in 2.5 years. This is by far the biggest invention of humankind. It's just by far, right? We now have machines that can think, and those machines can instruct other machines how to do stuff. So I think we should be incredibly optimistic about the next 10 years. Not just a little bit optimistic. I think we need to be wildly optimistic about the next 10 years, right? And I think the last thing we should do is just give up and, tax the rich and get increased payouts and so on. So I think the danger here is going in the socialistic left-wing approach, right? And the opportunity is for us to fight back, right? So if we fight back, I think we can do incredibly well. Now, what does this mean for Bitcoin, for other investments? Well, I will say this. I think, Matthew Miskis, terrible at names, Porkopoulos, right, has made a really great recent video on kind of the impact of liquidity and other factors on Bitcoin, right? So, he studied this stuff so well, and I really, really like his analysis. It's not necessarily new, but he's put all the pieces together in a really compelling way. And so what Matthew really is saying is this. Look, short term, there's all these factors that impact Bitcoin. The biggest one is probably global liquidity, right? So not just M2, right, but what they used to call M3, right, which the Fed stopped reporting in 2006, I believe. They stopped reporting M3. But they're a global money supply in every form. And global money supply has turned and is going up now, right? So, we were in an incredibly tight money supply. We still are, interest rates are very high. Real interest rates are very high. But global money supply is now increasing quite rapidly. And there's about a 3 to 6 month delay between liquidity and Bitcoin prices. But that correlation is not great. It's still only about 80%. So the R square is about 82%, I think, for the correlation between liquidity and Bitcoin prices. Michael Howell, who was at Solomon Brothers the same time I was, also pioneered this whole concept of liquidity analysis. And I think there's something to it, right? I think when the Fed rate lowers rates, it's really good for Bitcoin. The Fed raises rates, it's in general bad for Bitcoin. Although we've done really well over the last, 18 months in Bitcoin, despite really high rates, right? So, it's not a perfect correlation. And, but what really is amazing is that just the correlation between time since Genesis block and Bitcoin price, the log of Bitcoin price, the log of time, is actually 96%. So our score is 96%. So, the only conclusion you get out of all this is that, Bitcoin price does go higher. It goes higher with a lot of volatility, and you're supposed to hodl, and that's it. It's that simple. It's all about hodling. And if you look at this thing over long enough periods, and long enough means a couple years, 1 to 4 years, it starts to really flatten out, right? And so, that's what Matthew said. That's the same conclusion I got to by studying intensely the power law. Same conclusion that Sina and Plan C and Giovanni have gotten to. It's not important who figured it out first or whatever. Actually, Matthew figured it out right about the same time Giovanni did, maybe 3 months later. So he's very much of an OG in terms of understanding the power law. But, the bottom line is, this stuff does go up, and it's not an exponential increase, right? It's not an S curve. And so one of the people in a recent podcast was saying, is it an S curve? And he goes, no, it's not an S curve. S curve is exponential, right? So you're starting out, and then you hit the S curve, you go up exponentially, right? And then you flatten out. So if you look at the growth of Instagram or Facebook or social media or any kind of adoption of inventions like this, it tends to be S curve like, right? Bitcoin is not S curve like. It is a power function, right? Which is slower than an S curve, which means that we're probably not going to hit complete adoption to 1 billion users a day on Bitcoin within say 3 to 5 years, which is what you would expect, right, from a new invention like social media or the internet, right, or app store adoption or something like that, right? So it's slower, statistically slower. Now, what do I think could happen as an S curve? I think the adoption of crypto could happen exponentially. So I actually do think, the adoption of AI could happen exponentially. So I'm actually on the same page as Raoul Paul when he talks about this exponential age. I think the progress of AI is going to be exponential right now. And, to Balaji's point is we've only been there 2.5 years. Look what we've got in 2.5 years. It's mind-blowing, right? It is absolutely mind-blowing. And if you're coding like me, it's even more mind-blowing because AI is sort of the best coder I've ever seen, ever. And I've ran many, many teams, hundreds of people, hundreds of programmers, literally. And AI is just that on steroids, right? So I think we're seeing a bunch of these exponential trends. And I do think we will see an exponential trend in crypto adoption. And unfortunately, for a lot of the macros, they're not going to like it because they're going to be like, well, that's all bullshit. And these tokens are all worthless. And I don't disagree. Right? So what do I mean by crypto adoption? I mean, people with a phantom wallet, for example, on Solana that are sending each other stable coins. So that I think could be exponential. And I do think, right now, Solana, just why I think it could be exponential. Solana had under 1 million daily active users a year ago. Now it has 5 million. Okay. Where is it going to be 2 years from now, 3 years from now? Is it going to be 6 million? Maybe it's going to be 500 million, right? That would be what an exponential curve would indicate, that we are going to have, 5 years from now, 1 billion daily actives in crypto. And I know it sounds crazy that you'd say, how are you going to possibly have 1 billion people accessing crypto? Well, that's kind of what these things do. You have right now 3 billion people a day using Facebook. You have 1 billion people, 2 billion people a day using WhatsApp, 2 billion people a day using Instagram. And you have 1.5 billion people a day using TikTok. So once you get these apps that the trust factor is down, and they're super easy to use, these things just go exponential. It's like COVID, right? It's like a virus. First we hear about COVID, then everybody gets COVID, right? So I think we're seeing that kind of thing with these exponential technologies. And now everybody on the planet tried ChatGPT, right? Everybody has tried ChatGPT. So the spread of AI is growing exponentially, right? The spread of cryptocurrency tokens is growing exponentially. And so you don't want to take the wrong side of this exponential. You don't want to sit there and go, well, you know what? I'm going to stick to Bitcoin for transactions because I just don't believe in these other coins. I don't believe in stable coins. I don't believe in Solana. I don't like all this stuff. You may be right. You could say all that stuff. But these things tend to just grow like viruses. And I feel like we are in that mode right now where we're in the mode where over the next 24 months, an enormous amount of people are going to get these crypto wallets, right? It's just enormous. And so, is that bad for Bitcoin? No, it's good for Bitcoin because some of these people will eventually want to buy some Bitcoin to save money in Bitcoin long term and benefit from the power law. So I think it's all super bullish for Bitcoin. But it could also be really good for the tokens on these chains like Solana. I'm bullish on Solana. And it could be bullish for, Solana may not win. It may be something like Sui, right? I think it's a little fight coming from behind right now. So I think Solana is the lead horse, but other things can do well. And I think it's also very bullish for apps on Solana, right? And so I'm building an app on Solana. I'll show it to you guys in a couple weeks, probably 3 weeks from today. But I'm, I think consumer apps on Solana, crypto apps are going to do fantastic, right? I just think they're just do amazing, right? Because we have so many people with wallets now, and this is just like the App Store when there were when everybody had an iPhone and they just wanted to play with something, and the only app available was Fartcoin. Was the Fart app, right? And there was suddenly 100 Fart apps on the App Store. So I'm super, super bullish on cryptography, crypto in general, right? And I think you're going to have more and more people who are going to say, you know what, I'm going to build an app to do something, to do something. Maybe it's something AI related. Maybe it's something social related. Like I have a friend, Martin, and he just joined a company that started an app, and that thing is growing like crazy. And it started 6 months ago. Now it's like making $3 million a month in profit. So, and they're just hiring like crazy. So, these things, once they get going, they can go really super fast. And to get back to the macro thing, I think embracing AI, embracing AI and embracing crypto, embracing these two exponential trends is going to be amazing for America. And I'm not putting Bitcoin in there because I don't think embracing Bitcoin is going to be as important right now. And I'm going to be very it's a little bit controversial. I don't think that's going to be important for the next 5 years as embracing crypto and AI, right? Because what I think we need more than we need Bitcoin, having people save their money in Bitcoin is not what we completely need right now. I think it'll be fantastic for guys like me who have a lot of Bitcoin. I'm not complaining. I do want the price of Bitcoin to go up and everything, but I think that what America needs more than the Bitcoin reserve, right, is we need clear initiative on AI. We need to have clear rules on crypto, and they should be very, very lenient. Anybody should be able to do anything on crypto. X1, that's another fork of Solana that I'm pretty bullish on. My friend Jack Levin's doing that. To Martin Luther King Jr.'s point, Balaji says he didn't really think Bitcoin was going to 1 million. I think he did. I really do think he did think it was going to go to 1 million. I think that's just kind of post facto defense. I think he did think it was going to go to 1 million. And, clearly he was wrong. He cried wolf and there was no wolf. He's incredibly smart and I love reading Balaji, but statistically, his track record is not great. He keeps on coming up with these super well thought out arguments, but they never materialize. So I would say I'm a little skeptical on Balaji. I do think he makes a lot of points, and I don't think his conclusions are right. So what I think the conclusion you should get from this is America should embrace AI and America should embrace manufacturing, and we should build our own manufacturing like yesterday, right? We shouldn't be having all America's capital being channeled into China to build factories. That's ridiculous. But a lot of things can happen in a couple of years, and I think we're just at the beginning of this new administration. Give the administration a little bit of a shot. Bitcoin, I'm super bullish on. I think it's going to do very, very, very well. But you're going to have to be super patient, and you can't try to trade it. Trading Bitcoin makes no sense whatsoever. The only thing I would say right now is personally for me, I'm looking to increase my Solana exposure a little bit. I'm not going to do it by selling any Bitcoin. I'm just going to do it by allocating some money that I haven't allocated towards Bitcoin to Solana. That's kind of my plan. And also potentially X1 and potentially also SUI, which I own a little bit of right now. That's my view of the situation. I'm not a doomer like Balaji. I do think that one of the silver linings of this is I do think that interest rates are coming down. I think, I checked on when Jay Powell's term ends, and his term ends in May of 2016. So we have, worst case, absolutely worst case, right? We have 13 more months of Jay Powell. That is the worst case. Can I live for 13 months at these kind of Bitcoin levels? 100%, or even lower. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. So I'm in it for the long term. I've held Bitcoin for 7 years. I don't care. I'm not going to sell it one way or another. I'm not going to sell it this year. Unless it just went parabolic for some reason, but I might sell a little bit of it, but that's it. So anyways, that's my Sunday morning thoughts. I may do a space a little later if anybody's interested in joining. I will talk to you guys later.